Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Check this out, y'all. In this episode, I'm going to be introducing a new series called Confessions of a Criminal. I created this series because information had come to me that a lot of people that wanted to be on my show or provide a story to me just necessarily didn't believe that I would keep them anonymous or that I would change the name or whatever the case may be. They were concerned about people recognizing their voice, a whole lot of different issues that, in some situations it was legitimate, but some were not. But I still have to acknowledge what it is. So at the end of the day, I created this avenue for people to be able to get their story to me, whatever it may be. So I told everybody, I put the word out to spread it around that if you had a story, write it down, get it to me the best way that you could. If you wanted to give it to another friend that you trusted that wouldn't expose you, or get somebody to slide it under my cell door, whatever the case may be, whatever you wanted to do, however they wanted to get it to me, I was cool with that, right? And within a day or so, I received my first submission of Confessions of a Criminal. And let me say this, I don't allow the person that's submitting the story to me to name it. I name it after I've read it and, come up with something that really suits what I've read. So that's what I'm doing now, y'all. And another thing, let me say this too, right, on a lighter note. I know a lot of y'all have been getting on me about the introduction song. I had taken it out because I was working on another song, another intro. It's not ready yet, so I'm going to bring the old intro back until I get the new one done, and then I'm going to play both of them, and I'm going to let you pick which one that you like the best, and then we're going to keep it moving, right? But I really appreciate all the input that I get from everybody out there. I don't view it as negative in any way, shape, or form, because I know that you're telling me these things because you like the show and you want me to do the best I can under my circumstances, right? So I really appreciate all of the input. So with that said, I'm going to jump right into this first one, and I hope that you enjoy it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This is Confessions of a Criminal, y'all. Groomed to be a racist. When I was 3 years old, I remember my father teaching me how to say the N-word. I had no idea what it meant. All I knew was that every time a black or brown person came on TV, my father would pick me up, point at the TV, then he would prompt me, encourage me to say the N-word. Even then, I didn't get it. Mainly because when he did it, he made it seem like we were playing a game. He would tickle me and toss me up in the air and say, that's good, boy. That's good. That's an N, that's a nigga, that's you don't like these type of people. He would say all of these types of things to me, and I would laugh because I didn't get it. I was 3 years old. And it wasn't until my father picked me up one day from school that I started to understand that I wasn't supposed to like people that weren't white. My mother would usually pick me up from school, but this day, my father did. And standing outside the school, waiting to be picked up, the teachers would make all of the students, all of us, we would hold hands and we would play games and sing songs and do exercises, Just they were doing these things to occupy our time while we stood outside waiting for the buses that we were going to be getting on, and waiting for our parents to pull up to the stop to where we could get into the car or on the bus safely. But we would be holding hands and dancing and singing. And the person that I always held hands with was a guy named Michael. He was a black kid. He was a friend of mine. We played at recess. We ate lunch together and sat next to each other during class. I didn't know that, according to my father, that I wasn't supposed to be doing any of that. My mother never said anything to me about don't hold his hand and don't do. She seen me do this when she would come to pick me up. She never said anything. She would even speak to Michael and his mother as we were getting into the car. I never had any inkling that, according to my father, what I was doing was wrong. So when my father pulled up, he saw me holding hands with Michael. He waved for me to come to him. So I did what I supposed to do. I was going to my father. But in the process, before I let Michael's hands go, I turned to him and I hugged him, like I always did, and told him that I would see him tomorrow. Again, we were 3. You understand? We were 3 years old. The next thing I knew, I felt someone snatch me into the air. My father had come up behind me and grabbed me and yelled, "You don't hug a nigga." He yelled so loud and angrily that it made me pee on myself. Out of fear, I clutched my father, but at the same time, I was conflicted because this person just scared the life out of me. But I wanted him to comfort me. And as I cried, he patted me on the back. And he told me, don't never, ever let me see you doing that again. Crying, looking at him, I said, "What did I do, Daddy?" He said, "You don't hug a nigga. You don't hold hands with a nigga." Now, this messed me up because that word that he used, that he prompted me to say when we would be playing, when we would look at TV, now it became serious. Now I understood what he meant when he said, these people are not like you. These people are not equal to you. These people are beneath you. I started to understand what he was trying to get me to understand. So I sat in the back seat, crying, screaming for my mother all the way home. And when we got home, I saw for the first time my father beat my mother for allowing me to hug Michael. That's when I started to think that it was wrong for me to hug Michael because my daddy never got so mad like that. So my mind told me that I must have done something wrong, or he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have beat my mother, and I didn't want him to beat my mother anymore. I didn't want my father to be that mad at me anymore. So after that day, I stopped talking to Michael. I stopped playing with Michael. I stopped eating with Michael. I wouldn't even sit beside Michael in school. I was 3 years old then. Over the next 10 years, my father pumped me full of hate for anybody that wasn't white. Every time a black or brown person would get arrested and they showed it on TV, he would use that as an example of why we, white people, were better. Even though he was selling drugs and doing all of the other things that people that he was pointing out on TV were doing. But somehow, in his mind, he wasn't like them. It didn't make any sense to me. It didn't matter to him, he said, because those people, he said, were cursed by God, and white people were the chosen people. He's pumping this into me every day. Every day. I'm a teenager, y'all. When I was 14, my parents divorced. My mother got custody of me, and my dad had to move out. Before he left, he beat my mother again, terribly. She had to go to the hospital, but she wouldn't report him. She wouldn't tell them what happened, but they knew. And I wanted to say something so badly, but she told me to keep my mouth shut, that it would be worse, that it would be worse for her if I said anything. That's when my father accused my mother of cheating on him with a black man. It wasn't true, because my mother didn't do things like that. But after about a year of her being by herself, she started to date this black man named Jimmy. And Jimmy treated my mother nice. He treated her with respect. He wined and dined my mother. And he was there for me, but it was awkward because my mind had been polluted. I still loved my father, even though I had reason not to. But it had been put in me that we were different. And every chance my father got to claim that he was right about my mother cheating on him, he did. He would push that at me, even though I knew it was a lie. I was in the middle. I loved my mother, and I loved my father. I didn't understand what he was doing to me. The damage had been done. I was too far gone. One part of me knew that he was full of crap, but I wanted to please him. I couldn't get that out of me. When I turned 16, my father and some of his racist friends took me out drinking beer. I had no idea that I was going to be initiated into the brotherhood. When they started asking me questions about white supremacy, I repeated what my daddy had taught me, which was that white people were superior. Then they beat the hell out of me. It was a little more to it, but it's not important to this story. When my mother found out, she snapped out. She told me that I had let my father influence me my whole life, and now I had crossed the line that she could not accept. She told me that if I didn't find the courage to stand up to my father, that one day I was going to be just like him, full of hate. She didn't understand what I was going through, just like most people on the outside of the brotherhood. They don't fully understand how you become this monster. You don't understand a lot of the things that people say and do until it's too late for you to understand what's being done to you. And people on the outside of the brotherhood, even my mother, couldn't understand what I was going to. Now, I'm not making any excuses because I continue to participate in the brotherhood for years. But I was a child when my father planted that seed of hate in me. He didn't nurture that seed with love. He nurtured it with fear. I was afraid of him and wanted to please him. That's why I hated myself and anybody that wasn't white for years. Let me repeat that. I hated myself and anybody that wasn't white for years because I did not understand what had happened to me, and I didn't know how to stop thinking that way. I didn't know how to get that rage out of me. Rage towards a people that had done nothing wrong to me. The one person that had done all the wrong to me is the one that I loved the most, my father. I wanted to please him. One day, while in the penitentiary, because I ended up going to prison, I saw this man, a black man, that was being beaten by these white guys. They were not Aryan. They were not part of the Brotherhood. But I ran over there and I stopped them, told them to get off of him. And they were beating him to rob him. They wasn't beating him because he was black. They were just trying to rob him and take his stuff from him. But I stopped it. And after I stopped it, he thanked me. He was an older man. And he reminded me of Jimmy, my stepfather. I helped him to a cell, got him put up in there, and I went and got his stuff back. And I threatened that if they did anything else to him, that I would run them off the compound. They were cowards, so I didn't really have to back it up with anything. But a long story short, that was the day that I decided to leave this hatred alone. That was the day that I told my former brothers in the Brotherhood that I was done. And they beat me. They beat me worse going out than they did coming in. But it was worth it. For all the pain that I had caused, all the years as a part of the Brotherhood, a beating wasn't anything. I had to pay my pound of flesh. I had to be held accountable. So I had no problem with them beating me. I called my mother a week later after I had healed up and told her that I was no longer Aryan. Now, me and Jimmy, we talk at least once a week. I call him Daddy, and he calls me his son. And when I go home, I will be staying with my mother and my stepfather, Jimmy. And I'll no longer have anything to do with the person that planted the hate in my heart for people of color, black and brown. And that's my story. Now I'm going to wrap that up right there, y'all. And the reason that I wanted to do this show, because when I first got it, I decided that, I don't know about this. This is a little too much, but I've done shows with way more negative connotations than that. So I did it because I want people to understand that, sometimes we think we know what it is when we deal with people that are racist. We think we know what's going on. We think a lot of times that they choose that. He had no say in it. He didn't choose it. His daddy chose it for him. And he continued to participate in it. But I believe that this particular individual, and I still don't know who he is, and I've been trying to find out who he is because I wanted to thank him. But I think that, some people are taken advantage of when they're young, and when they get older, their minds are messed up so badly that they see life through that lens that the person that harmed them wanted them to see it through. To me, it's no different than being initiated into a gang, except that you believe that you're doing something that's going to be righteous. But this individual hated people for the color of their skin, and he was taught this by his father. Hatred is a taught thing, y'all. You don't come out of the womb hating people. But the good thing is that he got over it, he got through it, and now he's a better person. He's a better person for it. And I wish him the best. And I'm glad that he shared this story with me so I could share it with all of you. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to this now, y'all. I like what's going on with this series that I'm doing. And I hope that I get a lot more letters about this type of stuff. But whatever you decide to send me, anybody out there, I'm going to share with all of you. This has been the first episode of Confessions of a Criminal. This is Groomed to be a Racist, y'all. He was groomed to be a racist. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. And I say peace, y'all.